Forum. This is being filmed on Wednesday, October the 8th in the Memorial Arena, not the Save On Foods Arena, but the Memorial Arena in downtown Victoria. I'd like to start by thanking our volunteer crew and the Shaw staff for making it happen. The first part of Citizens Forum is always the Walter and Jack Show, so I'll start off with a headline in the Vancouver Sun. This is Wednesday, so this was from yesterday, Tuesday the 7th, I think. Vancouver Sun, LNG needed to pay for core services, says Christy Clark at the end. So, I mean, this isn't Christy Clark saying that LNG is needed to pay for core services, although I'm sure she did, but it's the Vancouver Sun choosing to put that story on right across the top of the front page of the major newspaper in the province. LNG needed to pay for core services. So what the corporate media, on behalf of the corporate ownership of this province and country, what the corporate media is telling us is that we have to now poison ourselves to pay for core services. It's come to that. We have to poison ourselves to pay for core services. That's not true. It's absolutely not true. We are very talented people in a very wonderful place, but the corporations, as they said in that movie, they have us by the throat, and that's what they're all about. So that's my theme for today's show. Don't trust the corporate media. Don't trust us either, but for sure, don't trust the corporate media.
Well, my reaction is, Jack, that's assuming that even when the deals are done, and I think there are some deals done already, and a lot of this just might be window dressing for public consumption, but that's assuming that this LNG will ever make the province a penny, no matter what sort of a deal they make. They have to give it all away in order to get it built, and it's such a globally competitive market. There's nothing to say that they'll stay here to continue to develop. I'm not.
Who wants them here? Who wants them here? It's a poisonous industry. Goodbye.
Well, they're making money.
They're making money, yeah.
There are a few people that are going to make money, but not for the benefit of the public.
And there'll be some jobs.
Yeah.
And there'll be some high-paying jobs, that's for sure. But do we want to poison our own? Do we want to pay our children large amounts of money to poison us? I mean, is that what our society has come to?
When I just say don't trust the corporate media, I mean, that's our theme every week, Jack. But I think in this case, I wonder about what this story is really about, because we know that isn't the truth, and most other things they're writing about this isn't the truth. And I suspect that they've already cut a deal or two, and it's going to be pretty onerous for the citizens of British Columbia. So they have to make it look like Christy Clark is standing up for BCers and driving a hard deal. Like, right, we're supposed to believe that one. And I think it could be that the corporate side of things are just playing along, or it might mean that they're not playing along at all and they're trying to get every last ounce of blood out of us. But no matter what happens, even probably the worst thing that could happen is if they sign the deal, because then we know we're in for something bad. And for the media to handle it the way they are is just another story for them.
Yeah. You know, all the stories about LNG never mention the word poison. They never say the word fracking. They don't say the word cancer. They don't say the words climate change. It's always about, we have to build our own media. I mean, that's what it comes down to. There has to be, we cannot be a democracy. This cannot be a country. We cannot be serious people if the corporations own all the media and use it to manipulate us. That's the fundamental bottom line of all of this.
Yeah. I mean, we have our own little Fukushima now here in British Columbia. Isn't that nice? With the Imperial Mines catastrophe, which seems to have disappeared right out of the media entirely. But I don't think the public's forgotten. The corporate media can cover this one up as long as they can, but the public, I don't think, is going to forget this one. And a lot of the development in the north of BC is around, they're keenly aware of public opinion, because eventually they have to get elected. And I think it could become a huge problem for them, particularly in trying to develop the Site C Dam, to generate a whole lot of electricity, to give it away to somebody up north. I can't remember who. Imperial Mines has another huge mountaintop that they want to take off up near Alaska. Who would give those guys another shot at it? If
The
you had
government
any-
of BC,
You know what I mean? If
probably.
you had any sense at all.
Yeah.
But that deal's already gone through, and that's been approved. So I mean, there's rocky roads ahead for the Liberal government. And Christy Clark, who by the way is very disposable, and in British Columbia, premiers are disposable. Look back the last 20 years, they've been tossing them out with the garbage.
Yeah, the premiers are disposable, the political parties are disposable. What's not disposable are the rulers, the 1% of the 1% who run everything, pulling the strings, manipulating us, manipulating the province, poisoning us, killing us, whatever it takes. And I'm not kidding when I say killing us, because in the logging industry several years ago, they changed the rules and a lot of people died. And then they changed them back, but they were just trying to make it easier to make money out of the workers.
Well, I brought in something today. I mean, the Post Media deal that's just been announced in the last couple of days in the media.
So Post Media is the biggest newspaper owner in Western Canada.
Yes,
And
about to be the biggest, conglomerate of ownership of media in Canada.
they own the Vancouver Sun, which
That's
newspaper I just held up. So we see how they treat us on environmental and economic issues. They're telling us that we need LNG, we need to poison ourselves to pay for core services. That's Post Media.
So I did a little bit to try to figure out what's going on. If they want to gobble up another 175 newspapers in Canada, English language papers, mostly Sun newspapers and stuff of that nature, just scores and scores and scores of small newspapers that don't necessarily have to follow the corporate line to the T, but with this, as this concentration of ownership is more and more upon us, it's not going in the right direction for us. I also looked at, if you don't like what's going on, you should appeal to the competition board. And I'll just read this because this is on their site. They say, while media ownership concentration can raise other public interest concerns under the Competition Act, the Bureau's mandate is to review mergers exclusively to determine whether they are likely to result in a substantial lessening or prevention of competition. And you think, well, that kind of makes sense in some ways, but how much lower can you get? I mean, there's no competition now, so another conglomerate buys up a bunch more. Given that, there's not a chance, there's not a hope in hell that they're going to turn this deal down. So it's just, I think it's an Orwellian society that we're entering into, where every last voice has to be snuffed out, Jack. There cannot be one little crack anywhere. They have to paper it all over and don't let any other views escape.
So it's up to us, and it's up to you, and it's up to all of us to not believe or not trust the corporate media, because unfortunately we can't. I mean, I wish we could, but we can't.
Yeah.
And support independent media. I mean, we're
Can I just
literally
hold this up, because I just wanted to, if we can get in on, I went to the website, but the address is very long. But if you Google what I have written right here, what does it say, Jack?
Postmedia /QMI transaction overview of merger. So probably Postmedia overview
That will
of
get
merger.
you right to the Competition Bureau, and they have commentary on this deal. You also, there's a place there for public input. And I think for anything, do it for your own enjoyment.
Yeah.
But what the heck, go to this site, and let them know what you think of the situation. It's one of the things you can do. The other thing is there probably will be an online petition by some of us or one of the other groups, and I'm sure they'll get a few 100,000 signatures on that. But you know, we got to keep fighting against it. That's all I can say.
We need more independent media. You know, whether this 175 newspapers, 175 newspapers, if they're owned by Sun,
Yeah.
it's a disaster for us. And if it's owned by Post Media, it's another disaster for us. So we don't win. So remember, we're citizens, not taxpayers. I talked about that last week. I just want to mention it again, that we can't allow them to take away the name citizen from us and just call us taxpayers. We are citizens. We should demand it of them. I noticed cashiers are still standing.
Yeah.
No stores seem to be willing to provide chairs for cashiers. I mean, it's painful, and it's a form of torture, really, to be forced to stand in one place for long periods of time. And yet they do it, and then people hurt their legs or whatever it is, and we pay a price. Why don't the cities or the province just legislate some rules like they have in many other countries, that cashiers can sit down when they're between customers or something like that? It's torture.
Yeah, or every hour get a 10-minute break to walk and do other things in the store.
Do something else. Yeah.
Just to get not to be standing.
It's almost like it's like that's how they crack the whip. They don't have the actual whip now, but they do things like that. They just torture people in front of us, and there's nothing anybody can do. You want to keep your job, you'll stand there. It's a crazy society. I phoned CFAX just a day or two ago. They were talking about ISIS and beating the drum of war. That's what they do. They're beating the drum of war. They're telling us that ISIS is going to come over here and kill Canadians if we don't stop them. And CFAX is not a two-bit station. CFAX is owned by Bell Media, one of the biggest corporations in this country. Owns the entire CTV network, Bell Media, many dozens and dozens of radio stations. They're big. And so they were talking about this, and I phoned up and I said, I don't agree with what you're saying. I think ISIS was started by and funded by and controlled by the United States. Not the people of the United States, but the corporations that run the United States. And I mean, that's documented. It may not be right, but certainly there's lots and lots and lots of very prominent journalists, politicians, everybody saying it, but the media won't report it. So when I said that, I only got to say the first sentence. He hung up and basically said it was a conspiracy theory. And it's very dangerous when the truth, as I see it, cannot even be spoken to the public, because CFAX has a big listenership. I think if we want to see the plan that whoever they are, have for the Middle East and for us, we just have to look at where we are.
Yeah.
Iraq was a prosperous, stable nation. Syria was prosperous and stable and secular. Both of them, the people who run the United States created this from the very beginning. They funded the group known back then, I guess in the late 70s or 80s, as the Mujahideen, who were created as an army funded by billions of dollars in order to attack and destroy Afghanistan and draw the Soviet Union into a war, which destroyed the Soviet Union or helped destroy the Soviet Union. They were behind this from the beginning. And it's led completely from that start. Osama bin Laden was a CIA agent. I mean, that's widely known, although never ever mentioned in the corporate media. And that's brought us to exactly where we are today. I don't think it's by accident. I think this is the plan. And now that's going to be used against us. It's already, I mean, millions and millions and millions of people over there have been killed, injured, displaced, sent into poverty for no reason whatsoever, except that the people who run the world are totally insane. And now it's going to be brought back here. There'll be a few false flag bombings if they want, and martial law.
Yeah, and that was the argument that they were using in the parliament, that the conservative government was using, saying, you know, we have to go after ISIS over there. If we don't get rid of them over there, they're going to be right here, and they're going to be attacking us right here on our own soil. But they don't seem to see the contradiction in the idea that, you know, when you go into a country and bomb the hell out of that country and create immeasurable pain and suffering, you might cause a little resentment. You know, somebody might not like that idea, and they're looking at the West going like, you know, what's the story? Why can they do that to us? It don't seem to occur to them that maybe you should just simply treat people with dignity and allow their humanity. There is not a problem on the earth that can't be solved with with just straight ahead negotiations. We all generally want the same thing. This illusion that we have to go to war is simply it's so wrong-headed, and it will be eventually the destruction of our civilization if we don't get it under control.
And unfortunately, that's very true. So that, I mean, that's where we stand on so many issues. I wanted to say I'm proud of Canadians. There was a poll somewhere. It said 68% agree with the bombing of ISIS and 32% disagree with the bombing of ISIS. But I was proud of all of us, because the 68% who do agree are wonderful people.
Yeah.
They believe that, you know, there is this huge implacable enemy that's going to kill us, because they believe the media. Well, if I believed the media, then I would agree with them. But I mean, I've lived a lifetime of lies from the media, so I don't believe it anymore, and I'm part of the 32% that disagree. But all of us, I think, are coming from good places.
Yeah, I'm troubled by that, Jack. I'm I'm worried about it. I find that you know, these are not evidence-based decisions that the public is making here. They're gleaning what they can from the corporate media. Now, if you go online, you're going to get a different story. You have to work a little harder to get the story, but you can eventually get to it. But who has the time?
And that's why we need independent media, because you can see this is a matter of life and death, war and peace, and if we don't know what's going on, if we don't know the truth, then how can we make intelligent decisions?
Yeah, and believe me, I can't follow it. It's a lot of work to try to follow these issues, and they're attacking us on so many fronts, and people are struggling just to make a living and stay ahead. So the average folk are not finding the time to dive into these stories at the level they have to in order to understand the complexities of the stories. And ultimately, the whole of society is being diminished. The story with post-media, you know, it's just one huge conglomerate swallowing up another one. What does that all mean? Well, it's just a little tiny bit less freedom, a little tiny bit less democracy, you know, and we're getting down into the shallow water now. There's not much left, and they're still hammering away to rob everything they can away from us.
Yikes. Walter, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure, Jack.
Yeah, and we've got to move ahead, but thank you for watching Citizens Forum. Welcome to segment 2 of Citizens Forum, being filmed on Wednesday, October the 8th. Our guest in this segment is Bonnie Halverson.
Halverson.
Okay.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about assisted dying. And Bonnie, you're part of a group called Choices in Dying Victoria.
Yes.
So maybe you can just tell us what it is and how you got started.
Well, Choices in Dying Victoria was organized as a result of the Carter-Taylor case in British Columbia in March 2013. We held 2 rallies, one in Vancouver on the Supreme Court steps and one at the BC Legislature.
I don't know about the case. Can you just say a few words about it?
It was a case of 2 ladies who went through the Civil Liberties Organization and through the legal system to challenge physician-assisted suicide in the province of British Columbia. If people recall the Sue Rodriguez case from 22 years ago, the lady who suffered with ALS, That went all the way to the federal Supreme Court level and was eventually turned down by one vote. And so these ladies were struggling for not only for their own decision making, but for all the people in British Columbia and Canada to have the right to choose a physician-assisted suicide.
How many people are in Choices in Dying Victoria?
We started out as a small group of Unitarians, largely from the First Unitarian Church in Victoria, and attracted a number of people from the wider community, and we encourage all people in Victoria to get involved with our group. Choices in Dying Victoria currently has about 73 members. We come from a core group of Unitarians in Victoria. Unitarians have been supportive of assisted suicide since the Sue Rodriguez case 22 years ago, which went all the way to the federal Supreme Court level. And we've had a monitoring committee in the Unitarian Council of Canada following assisted suicide throughout the world and throughout Canada over the last 22 years. So in March 2013, when we formed an active group in Victoria, we wanted to attract a broader sense of community to join us. And Unitarians, in a sense, are an eclectic group of faith people with or without faith, from agnostics and atheists to Buddhists and Catholics and Christians and non-Christians and Jews. So we are a collective community of people in Victoria, and so I think we reflect Canadians quite well.
I didn't know Unitarians were so broad-based. That's very interesting.
Yes.
And you said before we started filming that a recent survey suggested that about 84% of Canadians support the idea of physician-assisted suicide.
Yes, we're very excited that today was an Ipsos Reid poll was released by Dying with Dignity Canada, who sponsored it, and they were surveying Canadians ahead of the new hearing at the federal Supreme Court level, assessing their interest in assisted suicide and their level of support, including the people with physical disabilities and mental challenges and such. So we're very excited about the results.
Well, it seems to me that if 84% of Canadians want something, then that's what should be happening. Our government should just legislate it, but they won't.
Not with the current situation.
So maybe you can talk a little bit about the processes you've been through over the last year or two, and how your group is maybe a bit different from others.
So when we first formed, we had the 2 rallies, and then we had another rally last year for the World Right to Die Day in November. And the World Right to Die Day is a group of 34 countries around the world that support physician-assisted suicide.
And it's legal there?
Well, not legal in all 34 countries, but there are 34 countries working on legalizing it around the world. And Canada is one of them. And we're actively involved with the World Right to Die group as well. And so we held a rally last year on the BC legislative grounds. And we've also had a number of educational seminars for our members. We worked on missions and goals and statements and trying to pull together what our definition of dying was. And I think through the process we heard from all our people through consensus building and came up with a definition that reflected our people. We've also been involved with the Senior Health Expo, sponsored by Senior Living Magazine at Perks Arena. And next week, on October 15th, we'll be holding our first flash mob on an undisclosed location, because it's supposed to be exciting. We'll be releasing the location closer to the date. And we urge all Victorians to come out and support us. It will be from 3:30 to 5:30 on Wednesday, October 15th, somewhere very close to the Uptown Mall.
Okay. And you just want to publicize the issue?
Yes, we do.
Okay. People talk about a slippery slope. I completely support physician-assisted suicide. But people talk about, they say it's a slippery slope. Can you talk about that?
Sure. One of the arguments we often hear, sometimes from physicians, but often from people who oppose assisted suicide, is that doesn't it contravene the Hippocratic Oath? And if one really truly looks at the Hippocratic Oath, one of the tenets is that it is supposed to support and relieve pain and suffering and do no harm. And so if the Hippocratic Oath and the physicians who believe in relieving pain and suffering, they should be allowed and entitled to assist people in their last days on earth, should they choose to.
I mean, we shouldn't even be discussing it. It should be the law.
Yes,
you know.
yes.
People talk about palliative care and say, isn't that enough? Maybe some people say that's enough.
Yes. Well, palliative care and hospice care are really essential partners in it. There's no such thing as one or the other, or the chicken or the egg. It's always the chicken and the egg. Palliative care is very important to all Canadians. Unfortunately, right now, only about 30% of Canadians have access to good quality palliative care and hospice. People in the rural areas really suffer in this area, and we're in Victoria, and we happen to have excellent palliative care and hospice care, but we're some of the very few in British Columbia that have access to it. Palliative care is a multidisciplinary approach to people who have a terminal illness or a serious illness. They could be dying, but they're not necessarily so. It may be just relieving the pain and suffering symptoms of a curative disease as well. So it's important to get ahead of the pain, and if people have less pain, they may be willing to live longer. And so we're not rushing anyone to die. We want everyone to have the right to individually choose the timing and manner of their death.
We're almost out of time, but maybe you can just say how you happen to get involved in this issue.
Sure. Both my grandmother and my mother ended their days in residential care. My grandmother had had a serious stroke and broken hip, and ended up starving herself to death in residential care. And it was a very difficult scene to watch. She couldn't speak. She couldn't ask for anything she needed. And eventually she starved herself to death. And my mother more recently was immobile and had to go to residential care because she couldn't walk, and she had to have everything done for her. And she lost her dignity a little bit, day by day, a little step by step. And eventually she decided that life just wasn't worth living, and she chose also to starve herself to death. It took 12 days. We do not treat our animals this harshly. We treat our animals with care, compassion, and understanding. I take my dog to the vet, and they have a peaceful ending. It's a joyous experience, and it goes quickly. My mother suffered for 12 days, and that's why I'm so passionate about assisted suicide.
It's an important issue. Canadians support it, and there we are. Thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. We have a second guest about the issue of physician-assisted suicide, so we're just going to carry on. This is Galina Coffey-Lewis.
Correct.
And Galina, maybe you can start by just telling us how you got into this.
Well, thank you, Jack. Delighted to be here. I became interested in this many years ago. Actually, I was the third nurse in Canada with a master's degree. So that tells you it's been a long time, a long, long time. So as a very young nurse, I was working in a nursing home, and I had an experience that has vividly stayed with me all these years. And we had a patient who was having a terrible time with pain, dying with cancer. And he, towards the end, one day grabbed my hand like this and wouldn't let go of my hand. And he said, "Please, please help me die." He says, "I'm suffering so much." Well, in those days, we tried to control pain. We did the best we could, but really, we couldn't do a lot. And then he looked at me, and this is the image that's still in my mind 40 years later. He said, "You know, I was a farmer my entire life. If I ever had an animal suffering like I'm suffering, someone would have the compassion to put that animal out of its misery in some dignity." I still see his face, Jack. I still see him clearly in my mind. So that started my interest so many years ago and has continued, and I've just studied and volunteered. I'm not a nurse now, I'm retired. I'm not a doctor or I'm not a lawyer, but I've studied this and talked to people, and there's so much suffering that's not necessary in this world. And in Canada, we're very lucky to have good palliative care for some, but as you know, less than 30% get palliative care. And 5% of people still die in terrible suffering. This is not right. Every Canadian has the right to choose. We choose whom we marry, we choose how we live. We're at the point now, I think, with demographics changing and the aging population, where people are saying, I want to have choice about how I die. I don't need to or want to suffer. Now, having said that, I'd like to say I respect everyone's opinion. I respect those who want to die with assistance, medically assisted dying, and I respect people who are very opposed to that. So it's an individual choice. It's a very personal choice. But I'd really encourage people to really study this and not be afraid, because what I found is that the fear factor is very big. And people often respond with emotion, as you asked earlier in the show about, oh, the slippery slope. It's not true. In fact, do you know that in Oregon, they've had medically assisted dying for nearly 20 years now?
No,
They've
I've
not had one case, not one case of slippery slope. Washington State has had 73 deaths this year. There's not one complaint about slippery slope. So I think fear and emotion often have people respond in ways, whereas if they would have a mind to study and read the facts, get the statistics, they would learn that the slippery slope is not true.
Yeah.
All of the statistics.
The argument isn't even worth happening.
No.
As I see it, there's a very, very powerful force in this country that is not allowing this to happen. And the only powerful force I can think of really is the pharmaceutical industry, but that's another story.
Yes.
What's happening now with this issue?
What's happening now? I'll just briefly say I want to talk about this year. Like, we are so lucky to be in BC. Do you know that all of this growing emphasis on demanding the choice to die with dignity in one's own time has come from BC? We are where it's at. You look back over 20 years ago to Sue Rodriguez and how she went to the Supreme Court and said, whose life is this? I guess it was not hers, because they voted against her 5-4. However, one of the Supreme Court judges who said no at that time has now said he was wrong. Interesting. So there was Sue. Then there's Evelyn Martins, my friend. I knew her, who was the only Canadian to ever be charged in the criminal code for being with someone as they died. After being in jail as a 72-year-old woman and being in house arrest for 2 years, she was found not guilty. She was found not guilty because presence alone does not mean assistance. So that means, and by law, it's not illegal to commit suicide. It's illegal to assist someone. But presence, being there, is not considered assistance. So Evelyn was exonerated, a wonderful person, again from BC. Then the case that we heard about earlier, the Carter case, the Carter versus the government, and that was a case of a woman who went to Dignitas because she felt she had no other choice. And of course, then Gloria Taylor wanted to be a live factor in that at that time. And this wonderful document, this was the BC Supreme Court judge. It's like reading a novel. It's like the most interesting reading.
So what did she decide?
She said that the plaintiffs were correct. It is against the Charter of Rights, which guarantee life and liberty and justice for each person. It's against the Charter of Rights to not allow someone to have assistance.
So the BC Supreme Court
Yes.
ruled in favor
Yes.
of physician-assisted suicide.
Yes.
So is it legal?
That's a good question, because, of course, that happened in 2012. Gloria Taylor was given an exemption from the law, so that she could have assisted suicide within a year. Government was given 1 year to work on this. Well, they appealed it, of course. The appeal case, they lost. The Carter case, and this was with the BC Civil Liberties Association, they lost. Said in another way, it's called passing the buck, because what they said was not anything against what the judge had said. What they were talking about was that only the Supreme Court of Canada can change a decision that they made 20 years ago. Therefore, this is why the BC Civil Liberties has gone forward. And which brings us to this year, which brings us to next week. Next week, October 15th, this case is going to the Supreme Court of Canada. It's a very, very important day. It's probably the most important day since Sue Rodriguez. Now, it's been 20 years. So we will see what happens. Of course, there's opposition to that. We hope and pray that much will happen. This year, Jack, so much has happened in this country. For example, in February of this year, the Liberal Party, and then in April, the Green Party, they both have made statements of resolution to say their platform is to be a part of medically assisted dying, that will be a part of their platform. We haven't heard from other groups, but we have heard from those two. Okay, in 2014, we had the Liberals and the Green Party, that they are making it a part of their platform to say, yes, the laws need to be changed. Quebec, Bill 52 will be implemented in December of 2015 unless something happens with the government. We don't know. There have been 2 members, MP members in Parliament coming forth with this. The Canadian Medical Association now says 90% of the doctors agree. And this has all happened this year. So it's a very important time. Please get information.
I'd like to commend our media for not telling us any of that. Thank you very much. And thank you, Galina.
Okay.
Welcome to the third segment of Citizens Forum, being filmed on Wednesday, October the 8th in the Memorial Arena in Victoria. I'd like to thank again the volunteer crew and Shaw staff that makes it all possible. Our guest in this segment is Will Smith, and Will's been on the show many times before and is our director. So Will, take it away.
Okay, I want to talk about, because my own worldview has changed so much just from being associated with this show, working with you and talking to you. I mean, my background is really, in my family, is really conservative, and so this is, you know, listening to what you are asking people and realizing that you're asking the same questions that the other side's asking. I had to reconcile that in my mind. So the first thing I have to say is the world has to make sense to us. I mean, we have to have some way of making the world make sense. And this morning, my wife was looking at Facebook, and she said, look at this picture of Steve Harper and all the people and the guys in Parliament, and they had these cherubic grins on their faces, and you'd think that they had just, you know, solved world hunger or something like that. And instead, it was they decided they've gotten the mandate to solve more problems by killing people, which of course isn't going to work. So they're going to go over to the Middle East, and they're going to kill some people who live in the Middle East, and they're going to, and some of the Canadians, obviously, some young Canadians will be probably dying in these things. And so, you know, you look at that and you say, well, are these guys just monsters? Because they're laughing, they're smiling about this. And I still have to say, no, they're not. They're fulfilling their mandate. The society that we've created is functioning perfectly. The corporations are doing what they're supposed to do. Every single corporate charter says the corporation is in business to make money. It doesn't say that the corporation is in business to solve world hunger or to be fair to employees or anything like that. It's just to make money. So corporations, we have a basic disagreement that you know, I don't think that we have to stop corporations. I think we just need to rewrite corporate charters. And at some point, that's going to fix things. And then the other thing that's happening is that you can see in the way other people are acting that the world is not making sense the way it used to. So there was a piece in the news, I think I sent it to you, about a guy who's going to be investing in Goldman Sachs because they run the world. These tapes came out that Goldman Sachs tells the Fed what to do in the United States. And so he's going to pile on. I want to go with the winners. So he doesn't care about what's right or wrong. 50 years ago, that would have been, the guy would have said, this is wrong. We can't live in an undemocratic society where a private corporation is calling the shots for the Fed. But now he says, no, we got to make money. So something's different. So the way this can make sense, we have to change our worldview, right? So I've got a couple of quotes here. The first one, I was reading a book by Edo Nyland, who's a Canadian. He was a professor. And I picked this book up at the Victoria Public Library for $2. And it has a little part about, well, it's talking about how Odysseus, the story of Odysseus from Homer, is probably around the North Sea. And it's probably a Bronze Age history of Scotland. So Odysseus really wasn't from Greece, he was from Scotland. So here is a basic attitude difference of the people at this time. No one died forever. The Neolithic view of female sexuality was death-denying and life-affirming. In contrast, the Judeo-Christian view was, and still is, life-denying and death-affirming. Consequently, the civilization and religion of our Neolithic ancestors was very different from the society we experience today. Death meant something very different to our ancestors because it was always followed by reincarnation in a newborn baby. Death was not the end of a person's life, but it was recognized as a serious setback, and as such was mourned because a productive and needed loved one was taken from their midst. However, in time, everybody knew that this would be followed by a joyous return in a new body. And we're very cognizant of that. If you read the notes or the writings of Albert Schweitzer, he talks about when he went to Africa in the middle of the 19th century, and he said, we have a problem here. We can't get the natives to do what we want them to do because they're not afraid of death. So we need to get some missionaries down there to Christianize them so they're afraid of death, and then we can tell them what to do, and they'll do it. So that was obviously very successful.
Did Albert Schweitzer really say that?
It's in his writings, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It's just, I was shocked when I read that. So how do we reconcile this? I've been a trader, a financial trader, so I don't just grab onto an idea and say, yes, this is the right thing. I say, well, let's take a look from this point of view and see what kind of a scenario we can develop. So a book that I had when I was a teenager was called The Book of the Damned by Charles Fort. It's 100 years old, and it's always cool in high school to carry around something like that, The Book of the Damned, because people think, oh, what's he got, and they want to know about it. But anyway, this guy, all he did was he took news articles that didn't make sense in our view of reality. So frogs raining from the sky, a guy who's sitting in his easy chair and catches on fire and burns himself up, but the chair's fine. All these different things that are in the news and that nobody wants to pay attention to. And after writing a couple of books about this, here's what he said: the earth is a farm. We are someone else's property. Now, boy, that, and then the other one, remember that one I brought up in another show that was, we are not, you just think you're in charge. You monkeys just think you're in charge. So I went back and got that quote because I wanted to do a little bit of investigation about that. And it came to, it was Dennis McKenna, and he was on an ayahuasca experience in the jungles of Amazon, and he'd done this before, but this time it was different. And he found himself, he's a scientist, he's a very well-educated scientist. He found himself being a water molecule in the process of photosynthesis, which is a process that he's very familiar with from a chemical standpoint, but he's never been involved in it as a water molecule, and that's what he was taken through. And then he was blasted off up over the canopy of the jungle.
I'll just say that ayahuasca is a mind-altering drug.
Yeah, it's an endogenous chemical. It's produced by your pineal gland, so it's not a foreigner to the body like any of these other things. But anyway, so he said he was watching this and he was feeling, he said, what will happen if we destroy the Amazon? He was just getting this sadness. What will become of us? What will become of life itself if we allow this destruction to continue? We can't let this happen. It must be stopped. Suddenly, from a voice behind him said, you monkeys only think you are running things. You don't think we would really allow this to happen, do you? So the ancients, like back in the times of the Greeks or the Paleolithic era, if Edo Nyland is right, they had a pantheon of gods, but were they really gods the way we think of gods, or were they some kind of off-planet people? Well, there's a lot of arguments if you read these ancient manuscripts, there's a lot of arguments that these may be people or intelligence from off-planet. That's a tough one though, because there's a lot of stuff that we can't explain with our science. So going down the alien road I have a hard time with that. So I'm reserving judgment on that, but I still think that there's some points there that we can use to sort of give ourselves a different point of view. Now, the other thing that I just want to bring up is that, there's one other quote. This is a story that I read when I was 20, and this was written by George Gurdjieff, also probably about 100 years ago, explaining how things work on this planet. It's a parable. There was an evil magician. He lived deep in the mountains and the forests, and he had thousands of sheep. The problem was that the sheep were afraid of him, because every day he'd have one of them for breakfast and one of them for lunch, and they didn't like being killed, so they ran away, and he couldn't find them anymore. So he used magic, and he hypnotized all the sheep, and he suggested to them that, first of all, they were immortal and that no harm was being done to them when they were skinned. On the contrary, it would be very good for them if they got skinned and killed, and it might even be pleasant. And then he also suggested that he loved his flock, that he really loved his flock so much that he was ready to do anything. And the third thing he said was that if anything was going to happen to them, it wasn't going to happen to them today, some other time in the future. So then he told some, you're a man, you don't need to be afraid. You're a lion, you're very brave, you don't need to be afraid. So he gave all these different sheep, different scenarios, and then he just didn't have any problem anymore. He didn't have to worry about it, because they all thought that was happening to somebody else, or that they were special. And I didn't see that when I was 20. I didn't see that at all. Now I think I see it, because I think I see that as Confucius says, the world is not ruled by the rules and laws that we make, but it's ruled by these signs and symbols that we get. And I don't know where they come from, but I can see them now. I can see that we do get fed. We get fed stories that disempower us. And a good example of that is 9/11. 9/11 has been really disempowering for us, because it makes us all so afraid. But I see it differently now. I see that really what's happened is the powers that be, as we like to call them, the PTB, has self-destructed our system. They've taken a compartmentalized vertical power structure where everybody's isolated, and they've flattened it. And I think that's where we're going. So I like that symbol as being something that happened, that the wee little monkeys who think we control something, the little monkeys who did that think that they're saving the world. They think that they've caused the people in the United States to rise up in arms against these evil people over there in the Middle East. And I don't see that anymore. I see that as just, I don't know, I think the story that comes to me is kind of like the UVic bunnies. I think that we're just in for a big cull right now, because as David Suzuki has shown us, we don't have enough food no matter what. So, another way of looking at this is that something's happening that's out of our control, and let's recognize it and acknowledge it. Okay, so the control, who controls this stuff? An interesting paper passed before me. It was done by two Swiss scientists, and they were looking mathematically at control of corporations worldwide. The statement that the control of corporations is dispersed among many shareholders invokes the intuition that there exists a multitude of owners that only hold a small amount of shares in a few companies. However, in contrast to such intuition, our main finding is that a local dispersion of control is associated with a global concentration of control and value. This means that only a small elite of shareholders controls a large fraction of the stock market without ever having been previously systematically reported on. So what looks like a democratic distribution of control from close up actually turns out to warp into highly concentrated control in the hands of a very few shareholders. So that's saying that our system is in fact run by a very few people. So do those people, are they victims or are they perpetrators? That's the big question. I have to ask that. That's what I'm going to be asking for the next 12 months. Are all these people, is Stephen Harper a perpetrator or a victim? Certainly he thinks he's like Tony Blair, he's saving the world. He's doing something good because he thinks these people are worth less than these people over here. So he's doing the right thing. It's a hard thing, but somebody's got to do it. I mean, that's what it seems like to me. Does that seem logical to you?
Yeah,
Reasonable?
it seems logical, but I don't know if it's right. Does he think he's out there saving the world, or does he know exactly what he's doing? Does he know that right now ISIS was in fact funded by his good friends, the Americans, from the very beginning. Does he not?
I don't think he
know
care.
that?
I don't think anybody would really care about that as long as, I mean, as long as the right thing is happening as a result of my actions, then, you know, why should I care?
So the right thing being, we're
Well,
saving Canada from
Yes,
a
let's
great
save
evil.
Canada and forget about these guys over here. I mean, they're not worth as much as we are. Because isn't that what we're really doing? We're saying these people are not worth as much as these people.
Yeah, I see it a little bit different. What I see is the whole thing is a setup, and we're being dragged into another war by the fact that they created an enemy that is so violent, so evil, so vicious, beheading people on television, you know, and all of that, and we're being told to believe it. I don't believe it. I assume Stephen Harper's a very intelligent guy, therefore I don't see how he could believe it, but maybe he does. I don't know. Who knows?
Well, we're still faced with the, you know, as you've said many times, we need to create a new news media, and so because we need to get this information out there and to show people what's really going on, give an alternate story. And my contention, the thing that I'm working with in my mind is that we've got to be able to do this without money. I mean, we've got to be able to, because the money is what makes it, that's what makes the world go round, but it's also what causes the problems and causes a skew in our value system. So the people with the money get to call the shots, and I don't think that's right. I agree absolutely with you there. So I think what we have to do is look at who we are as people, and with ICTV, we're trying to create a group of volunteers who are capable of putting up a video of what they think is important. So I think that that's kind of what we need to do at our TV station. Our call for a community television is to enable people, empower people to put up their own videos on what they think is important. I mean, for example, the way I got involved with this is I went to the Vancouver Island Criminal Justice Association. They have these great symposiums and panels on different subjects, and they're going to have one, I think I'll put it up on the screen, but it's on mental health and the criminal justice.
Oh, yes.
And see, that's a really interesting subject because it's, you know, what this is how we treat people who are not perfectly capable of taking care of themselves. And probably only a few people will be in the audience, maybe 20 people. But this is a really interesting topic. I've been to a lot of these. So we're looking for people, for example, who could come and help us stream that live so that more people could see it, or make a video of it. And so
Are you going to film it in a way that can be shown on community
I'm not,
television?
but I'm looking for people. And in general, I just want to put out a call that we're looking for people who are interested. And we also need a place. If there's someone who has a vacant, you know, maybe less than 1,000 square feet where we can set up a studio, because we've got all this equipment, we've had all this donated equipment, and we'd like to be able to walk, you know, somewhere around Fernwood and be able to have a regular shows, more
So a small
content
studio.
that we do.
How small can we get in terms of square feet?
I think, you know, we
500?
could probably, 500 square feet would probably be enough, really. I mean, we can probably finesse it into a space that way, because really it would be nice to be able to show some of these things a lot more often than we can do it here on TV. We'd like to put it on YouTube or stream it live even. We've got that capability on our YouTube channel. So we need just somebody who could let us use that without paying any money for it, because otherwise, you know, somebody's going to tell us what to do with it. Somebody who likes what we do and thinks it needs to be expanded. So I guess I would make that call that, you know, if somebody out there has some space that we could use, that would be
Well,
great.
you know, I'm always saying people have to support community television, not community television, but support independent media. So if somebody has a small space that could be used as a studio, that's a way they can kick in. Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, well, I read an article today about Sears. They stopped trading on the New York Stock Exchange, and because a supplier had said we're not delivering anything more to Sears.
Because
So that's pretty much a
we
death
don't think we're
warrant.
going to get paid.
Yeah, we don't think we're going to get paid. They're having, you know, they have cash flow problems. So trading stops, and then, you know, then they really do have a cash flow problem. And then, well, what happens now under U.S. law is whoever wrote the derivatives for their hedge which derivatives are not really hedges, they're bets. Anyway, the way the laws are written, that just makes them sweep all the money off the table, so the people who had pensions for Sears are probably going to be working at Walmart without any health plan. Thanks,
We're out
Jack.
of time. Thank you so much. That was fascinating and interesting. Thanks for watching Citizens Forum.